right, it's 7:35, so let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, gender nonconforming and trans deities, you're welcome for tuning in to the Hoodoisie. That's right. Sit back, relax, grab a bottle, get possessed, and drink your favorite spirit or non-alcoholic beverage if you're chilling on them 12 steps, and take in this radical live stream off your LCD screen as you get radical with the Hoodoisie. That's right. The Hoodoisie is keeping it radical in the time of Corona with pandemic issues. Pandemic Issues is our collaboration with Southside Weekly. We got the editor-in-chief of Southside Weekly down there. Give it up for Jackie Serrato. And every week we are bringing you on Wednesdays pandemic issue episodes, which is us giving you the stories and the analysis that local corporate and bigger media will not. I'm your host, Ricardo Gamboa, or Ricardo Gamboa. Pronouns are they, them, cute, sexy, smart, revolutionary, natural blonde. All right. And my co-host, introduce yourselves. Let's hear them.
Hi,
I'm Charles. Go ahead, Jackie.
Race, be the first one. Be the first one.
All right. This is Jackie Serrato, editor-in-chief of the Southside Weekly from the Little Village neighborhood, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. Thank you.
So I'm Charles Preston, audience engagement manager for Injustice Watch and Twitter Troll. My pronouns are he and him.
And you're a Taurus. Isn't your birthday coming up, Charles?
Hell yeah, May 20th.
Hey.
Big 30.
May 3rd?
Big 30. The big 30.
May 3rd, I was like, then it passed. What are you talking? Okay, cool. Big 30. Charles is turning 30, but looks 23. Let's give it up for Charles for no reason whatsoever. It's just his genes. All right. So tonight we are coming at you with Inside Job, where we get to talk with the city reps that are fighting for us on city council. And I cannot tell you how excited we are for this show. We think it's so important and so informative and a way to bridge the outside with the inside. And we have some super special guests. All of these are city reps that are fighting for us on city council that were part of our, also people that we endorse as part of our co-conspirators forum. And it's so glad to see them fighting for us now in the city hall, blood. So who do we got? We have from the 25th Ward, Byron Sicho Lopez. From the 33rd Ward, we got Councilwoman Rosana Rodriguez. And we have from the 20th Ward, Jeanette B. Taylor. And that's B for Don't Mess With Her. All right? Cool. Let's get started. So I think, I'm thinking about, and actually, let's give it up for Jeanette because she is coming at us from San Francisco. If you can see the Golden Gate Bridge in the background. But I'm thinking about, I'm actually thinking about your wards, for Rosana, it's Avondale, Hermosa, principally, right?
Avondale. So Albany Park, Avondale, Irving Park, and Ravenswood Manor.
And then Byron, right, for when we're talking about the 25th Ward, that's been gerrymandered like crazy. So it's Pilsen, Chinatown, part of West Loop, South Loop, the Abla Homes and BJ Wright projects. Am I missing something else out there?
McKinley Park.
McKinley Park. I had a nibble of McKinley Park. 20 right here, 25th Ward represent Pilsen. And Jeanette, you're coming out the 20th Ward, which is most of Englewood, which is most of Woodlawn, but also includes parts of Englewood and back of the yards. Am I correct?
New City and Greater Grand Crossing.
Oh, GGC. That needs to be what they call it in rap videos from now on. All right.
Yeah.
So I guess
we have Little Italy too, by the way. Little Italy. I think so talk about gerrymandering.
So let's talk. I think what I just want to start off with is paint me a picture of what are some of the things that you are seeing, how the pandemic is affecting your wards and how you guys are responding to it, how you humans are responding to it.
I can start with that. I represent, as I said, Albany Park, Irving Park, Avondale, and Ravenswood Manor. We have a highly immigrant community, is mostly Latinx, but there's people from everywhere. What we are seeing is undocumented people who don't have any help coming towards them. There's no dedicated funding or revenue to address the needs of undocumented people. They're relying almost exclusively on mutual aid. And we are seeing a lot of people really worried about not being able to pay their rent. and being evicted. So we hear from people every day about the fear of not being able to have a roof over their heads or provide that kind of safety for their families. And this is really, really scary, because we know that right now the evictions have been stopped, but if we don't put measures in place that are going to, extend to after the stay-at-home order is canceled, what we are facing is mass evictions, and that would be a disaster.
Yeah, maybe I can follow. And similar to Rosanna, we have a beautiful. I was one of beautiful, diverse community, the 25th ward, but also our community is being hit really hard. I mean, talking about Chinatown, the Chinatown community, for instance, has been hit with the issue of coronavirus for much longer than the 6-7 weeks that we have in. There was a few months prior that when the issue of the coronavirus became a global problem, and a lot of people stopped even coming to Chinatown businesses. It really became very, very deserted for a while. It's been now months. Really hard for the small businesses. There's a lot of also undocumented families that depend on that. Many families that live off the restaurants and economic activity there. We also have, of course, Pilsen, also the a iconic Latinx community. A lot of undocumented residents that are right now left without any sort of relief. A lot of families are struggling for rents. They're struggling to pay bills, and there's really no support, and they cannot work. From our street vendors to the people who work in our factories, small businesses, you name it. And also we have the Habla Homes Barbara Jean Wright, which is also a strong African American community that are being also affected really hard, as long for the numbers have started a lot of infections, a lot of we're dealing with funerals, that also low income families trying to, on top of overcoming the crisis, getting getting burdened by financial costs and cost of medical bills and all that. So across the board, I think we do have a delicate situation, and I think that's across the city, across the country, across the world. So really, I mean, I remember last time we were here, I mean, the thing with Janet and Rosanna before we were elected, and I just say that it's very refreshing and with you, Ricardo, actually, in a similar show. So it's really refreshing to see public officials who haven't changed, and they continue to fight the good fight. So very honored.
Right. And that they're Latino too, because usually when they're brown, they're the first ones to start selling out the community. I will not say any names, Mike Rodriguez, but hey, I will not do that. That is inappropriate. Let's hear from you.
So it's the same story, just the different side of town. The communities that are usually disinvested in and mistreated are experiencing the same exact thing in COVID. We have a large number of cases. We don't have enough testing and testing sites. It's the same story. And in my community, we have a lot of essential workers, low paid essential workers. And so I also have a population of undocumented Latinos, but also Africans that live in my community who are not getting the support they need. And so it's trying to figure out how to use those partnerships that we have across the community to get those folks that help. But it's disheartening that somebody got a blank check, and of course the Black and brown community can't cash in on it.
Right. And I think that somebody you're referring to might be right. Might be our mayor, right? And I'm thinking about that because this is the first time we have for 4 years it was just Carlos Rosa, right? As the alderman, so as a socialist alderman, kind of really bringing kind of progressive issues and speaking out on behalf of us. He's been on the show a couple of times. We heart him. Even his hair, it's great. But also, I think now there's a handful of you all, and I heard you all have been becoming best friends with Lori. She loves you guys. You guys go to Soho Club and get drinks together. Am I making this up? Is this
Series? No, they go to Series with Eddie Johnson. Series.
Yeah, but they're at Series Happy Hour.
No.
Wait, maybe But I mean, I think, but the reality is, you all have been actually getting into it, and you guys have been some of the most vocal critics. And I personally want to thank you all because there's so many of us that we're already disenchanted with politics,
Mhm.
and in a moment of pandemic, when we see when we see our communities not being able to get the just resources that they deserve, it only exacerbates it and makes us more empathetic. And knowing that there are people like you all out there fighting for us, this isn't even a question. I just want to sing your praises. If you want me to have my boyfriend drop off some pina coladas or some cake for you, he will. I have nothing. Charles or Jackie, you got anything?
So the people want to know why they paying rent. Like, why are we paying rent in the middle of a pandemic? My mom want to know why she paying rent. So, can
That's
you
a
all
good
speak to
question.
any rent relief? Can you speak to the I don't know, the priorities of city council right now in regards to housing?
We don't have no power. So what you mean priorities? We have no power. We didn't choose to give it away. Some of our coworkers decided to. And so we have no power. So we have a rent, what was that? What they calling that?
The rent
I'm trying to
assistance, the
look for the
rental
right.
assistance fund.
Not rental assistance, because remember, they only had 2,000 and 86,000 people. I'm talking about this pledge. So now landlords have a pledge.
The pledge. It's a
So nothing in writing, right?
Mhm.
Nothing legally binding to say people are trying to figure out how to feed their kids, and we gonna worry about the rent. We gonna have people pledge, but these same people fund certain people's political campaigns. So of course they're not going to get them to do anything in writing. Of course they're not going to get anything that holds them, especially since it ain't nothing but Black and brown folks who's struggling. So
Jeanette,
same
you are
thing,
doing the
different thing.
most.
I
Like,
mean,
I love your
I'm just
like.
gonna say, y'all love people love listening to people's talking points. Don't tell me what you're gonna do. Show me, and you show me time and time again in this little time that you can invest in Southwest if you want to. Invest in people. That's what I'm interested in.
Right,
and so we are pushing for that type of. The state is so Delia Ramirez and a bunch of folks from the state. Rosanna and I with the Right to Recovery. We're in a bunch of different coalitions pushing stuff that's progressive, but of course, we're always seen to be the crazy. It's funny. Bernie got out of the race, and then they used all his talking points. now we're gonna use Bernie's talking points.
To your point, Jeanette, to your point about the non-binding pledge that the mayor decided to put forward with a group of big landlords, and some of those landlords are victim people. Like they were in that press conference and they said that they were signing on to this pledge to negotiate with tenants, to give them grace, to make sure that nobody got evicted. And those people are filing evictions, and it's just a charade. Like it is non-binding. There's nothing that actually enforces anything. As Jeanette said, we had the rental assistance fund, the housing assistance grant, and there was 83,000 people that applied for that fund, and only 2,000 grants were able to be given to people. And that it was a lottery. And actually, the fact that it was a lottery helped that it was not only the people with easy access to the internet, and that was Carlos Rosa, actually, the one that got in there. And he was like, if you're going, it was going to be first come, first serve. And Carlos was like, if you do a first come, first serve, only the people with with access to the internet are going to apply. So you need to do a lottery so that our offices could help people apply. Matt Martin also submitted an ordinance, and it has been a struggle. It was sent to the rules committee where ordinances go to die, and the mayor picked a fight with Matt as well when he introduced it, saying that he was not being collaborative when he had sent the ordinance to her people 10 days before to work on it. So I mean, I think work is being done, but there is not the political will in order to make that happen, right?
Yeah, and one other thing, and I think, Jeanette and Rosanna definitely, especially Jeanette definitely gets me going with all the, when the students, really pointing out the hypocrisy and the double moral, right, that goes on. Talking about, and you're right, I think Charles, to your question, I mean, as the government, I think rightly so, is asking or communities to stay at home, to protect the well-being and the health of people, we also have a responsibility to create the conditions so people can stay at home and protect themselves and loved ones. The problem with all this, and if you look at the numbers, right, we have right now only unofficial numbers on those who were able to actually get through the line, because the unemployment line for anybody who has called is, it is a mess. It is, it's really hard even to get in the unemployment line. Over 750,000 people already have filed in the state of Illinois for unemployment. We have an undocumented community who is not even registering those numbers. Huge numbers, unprecedented numbers. We have a responsibility to say, okay, well, we have people who need to stay home, and obviously housing becomes the number one thing. You need to put a roof over their heads. Yet, instead of creating policy that guarantees that we cancel rent and mortgages. Today, we were early on in a press conference when it makes sense that during the pandemic, in a crisis, that people don't have, or we have to delay our mortgages on our rent payments. However, what we got from the city level was a solidarity pledge, quote unquote, where we said, well, we're gonna, and there was an impressive lineup of developers and real estate agents there that, came in forward talking about unity. The next week, the same, at least one of those CEOs of TLC was filing already eviction notices for their tenants. I mean, how are we going to tell people to stay at home? How are we going to tell people that, hey, look, take care of your loved ones, take care of your health, your families, and then will we find the way to address the issue that we all face? No, we said, we're going to look out, the city now with absolute powers, the administration goes, no, we're going to look after the developers and real estate agencies, and yet let the working people, the same people who are working in grocery stores, the people who are working in factories, making sure that we have the essentials completely unprotected, and now desperate, also they're almost forced to expose themselves so that we can also pay the bills that these guys are forcing us to pay. That's the hypocrisy that goes on. A week later, the same guys that were pounding their arms to their chest are the first ones to violate their own solidarity pledge. So again, and then the 2,000 grants for like over 83,000 people who actually need it, and the people who actually found the link, because it's not like we have good systems in place to really assess the need. So we do have a failure, and we have of the system that is not new. This system has had inequality for such a long time. It just got into gross levels, really levels of complete disregard for people of color, Black and brown communities who are, as again, put themselves on the line to make sure that we have essential services. It is unacceptable. So again, we need to protect our communities by passing legislation in writing to hold accountable these corporations and developers who are profiting from us. And this is not the time to talk about profit. This is the time to protect the well-being and the health of residents. And if they mean it, then do it.
Wow, Byron is running for president up in this, y'all.
I see it.
It's Jeanette. Jeanette is the one. She starts like throwing and then Rosanna, then
No, my favorite thing about Jeanette is like her South Side and like her like Black and brown woman talk when it comes out. She's like, some people, I'm not gonna name any names, some of my coworkers.
Exactly. And then it's like, okay, now you have to go for it.
But I do think one of the things I am thinking about is that isn't that not been a mode of this administration, right? I'm talking about like this pledge, saying that we're pledging for this performance of, of I'm looking out for people. Isn't this exactly what Lightfoot has been doing throughout her career as mayor? And what I mean is, even if we think about her campaign promises, right? She actually campaigned on an educational platform that was almost a copy and paste of CTU's platform. And then all of a sudden, the same platform, she has teachers fighting for the resources she was promising to give. She actually campaigned on reopening the environmental department, and all of a sudden is allowing Hillco to bomb Little Village, imploding the Crawford plant that's going to particular matter and endanger over 75,000 lives, and only fining them, right? Coming down on talking about she's going to end corruption, has an ethics, has this whole kind of performance around ethics. And then what she actually does is only fine them $68,000, deflect accountability, not provide these residents that have now just been endangered any type of reparation or resources. And this is the same company that Ricardo Munoz also fought to give, when he was on break from domestic abuse charges and finally showed up at in City Hall. Actually showed up and got a 20 million tax abatement for Hillco. And so I'm thinking about, like, one of the things is, I have many of us on here, like Charles, and we have our own feelings about Lightfoot because we know so many people that are involved in, have been involved in, and ourselves were involved in kind of anti-police brutality work, and know about Lori on those review boards. But like, for my thing is, I'm still that kid that wants to believe in the best of people, or believe that people could change. And I was like, man, she had a really progressive platform on paper, and then here we are fighting for even the most basic minimums of things that she promised. And so again, what are ways in which did you all expect this kind of confrontation, or what are other kind of surprising issues that you see blowing up on city council, with the mayor?
So I'm gonna go
Very
first.
diplomatically, you all.
Go.
First of all, she was the police. Like, come on. The police report, like, come on. When people show you who they are, believe them. That's Maya Angelou. She sat on the police board. I'm gonna tell you my only recollection of Lori Lightfoot doing this before I got in this seat. Raquel's Boyd family was at the police board meeting, and Raquel Boyd hadn't been in the ground a month. And she told her family they were way too emotional, and they kicked them out of the police board meeting. So I just lose my relative. She wasn't doing anything. I don't understand why. She ain't been in the ground a month, and you're telling me I'm too emotional?
It's like being emotional. Something like when aldermen don't fight for your budget, you make a whole ass website to try and shame them. Kind of emotional, huh? I think that's
she didn't do nothing but shame herself. So to me, there are a list of problems that can make her fix herself. First of all, she has to be open to listening to everybody.
Right.
And she's not. That's
right.
Part of her problem.
And Jeanette, one of the things is, can you
ain't willing to listen? That's number one.
Yeah, and I think
you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, she has to be wrapped around people who are born and bred from Chicago. You can't get people from Ohio and California and other places to teach you what we lived. My lived experience makes me who I am. And so if I've lived here, and happy birthday, Charles, my birthday is on Friday.
Oh,
and I'm
Taurus.
That's why we get along, Charles. You cannot tell me, I don't care what you read in a book. I don't care how many African American study or Latino study classes you took. As a Black woman living in Chicago, my lived experience makes me who I am. So if I'm telling you that CPS does not listen to Black and brown parents, that they don't put the information in a language that people can understand, and that this city has disinvested in us for years, and you don't listen, you ain't nothing but Rom 2.0 to me. And I said what I said. You can't do the same things over and over again and think you're going to get different results.
Right.
And I'm going to be honest. I was like everybody else. She started off with these briefings. We had conversations. We had this dialect. And then somewhere over the rainbow, it changed. And so I'm always open to having those conversations with her. And believe me, they're hard because politically we don't see it the same. We don't. But one of the laws needs to be, if you ain't from Chicago, you shouldn't get to be mayor.
I think that's a good law.
Yeah, I agree with that law.
So the three of you, Rosanna, Byron, and Jeanette, you voted against the mayor's emergency powers, which allow her to enter into contracts and kind of, move the budget around. Why did you decide to vote against that? And what was the general feeling within the city council?
When
common sense.
When that ordinance was proposed, when we first read it, there was not even a sunset provision in it, right? It was like, oh, we want to do this and we're gonna do it forever, and and we were like, wait, what are you talking about? So the ordinance would give the budget director full authority about how to disperse the funds, like move them around however they see fit. And we had a problem with that, and we proposed a bunch of amendments to it, and we wanted to make sure that that we have assistance for renters and mortgage relief, and we wanted to make sure that there was a sunset date, and we wanted to make sure that we had input. And I mean, there was a whole set of amendments that we proposed that for anybody that values good government should be like a default. Like, yeah, sure, this makes sense. One thing that was really awful about the process is that they started the messaging out there to sell the ordinance was that we were opposed to getting PPE. That if we voted against that ordinance, what we were doing was getting in the middle of the city's ability to get PPE. And that started going out in tweets and, you know, attacking us for opposing the ordinance. But that was not true. The mayor and the city already have purchasing power, and they have been buying PPE. If they waited until this time to get PPE, we're screwed, right? Like, they were getting PPE and it had nothing to do with that. So the other thing that it was very important for us was that there was equity in the disbursement of the funds, and we were actually placing resources in the most vulnerable communities. We know the disparity in access to healthcare for Latinx and Black people in Chicago. We know that Black and brown people are suffering the most, and it was important to us that was written. And we face a lot of criticism from people saying, oh, we should trust the mayor, we should trust. How this is not about the personality of anybody. This is not about one person. This is about, we want things in writing because we believe that then we can hold you accountable, right? But that's not how it went down. The good thing about what happened is that we have not had a vote so close since the council wars, right? Like, it was 21 to 29.
Rosana, can you say what the,
yes.
Can you say what the council wars are, just for people that might not know?
Right. So the council wars was a period in city council when Mayor Harold Washington was elected, where there was a block of mostly white, well, basically all white aldermen and one Latinx person, who decided to block everything and anything that that Mayor Harold Washington would put forward. And it was an incredibly horrible time, and of course a very racist dynamic. So when that happened, there was a lot of opposition to the mayor. But after that, so Mayor Daley and Rahm Emanuel were able to consolidate power, and they had basically rubber stamp councils where whatever they wanted would happen. But what we're seeing in this council is a lot of people that are willing to stand up and say, no, you're not going to do that. And of course, you know, there's a lot of committee chairs that went with the mayor, even when I believe that they knew better. But we were able to put a message out to say, particularly Black and brown people in city council, because the majority of the people who voted against the ordinance were Black and brown people, the majority of the Latinx caucus, the majority of the Black caucus, the majority of the progressive caucus, but only Daniel Laspada of the white people stood with us.
Damn. So the white caucus holding us back.
That's new.
I mean, I think one of the things that, you know, that I'm kind of, even when you're saying this idea, like, you know, this idea about pledges, and also when you guys voted against the emergency powers, as she said, it's blocking PPE when that's actually not true. One of the things that I'm finding most scary about Lightfoot is one, you know, and Jeanette and the, you know, when she was speaking last, which is her retaliation. Right. And the fact that she said that she's going to collaborate with people. And then you all, when you voted against the budget, you know, found yourselves on a website that she made. But also it's like that, you know, part of what got her elected was being able to leverage her identity, right, as a Black queer woman, and that meant some type of progressive promise. And what we've seen is actually the exact opposite, her acting almost like Trump. Right. She calls fake news on things. She has no problem kind of lying. She has no problem trying to shame and bully people into submission, into agreement. You know, in the same way that Trump put a full page ad out to try and demonize the Central Park Five, we just saw her during this pandemic not talking to any of the white people that are gathering, or, you know, or more affluent people, right, multiracial affluent people that are gathering in somewhere like the West Loop, but going to harass young Black boys that get enough harassment in this city, you know, and I know because I've taught hundreds of them. And so she's over there trying to, you know, demonize them and kind of shame them in this public spectacle. And, you know, so again, like, it's funny that, like, this Black queer woman deploys the most white masculinist patriarchal ways of kind of trying to discipline her city council and the city's Black and brown population. And so I'm asking that because I guess one of the things that I'm really interested in is that when we think about how is she operating, how are you guys navigating this moment? What are you guys like? How are you? Because one, the reality is, like you said, this is the most opposition we've seen in city council in a 29-21 vote. So what are the strategies that you guys are doing to ensure that Black and brown people are getting looked out for against someone that is operating in that way?
We're organizers. All three of us on this call are organizers. So we come with a base of people. So honestly, we're the threat. And so our job is to come up with policy and to come up with things that make the city work for everybody. And when it doesn't happen, just like we have a citizens to answer to, so does she. So it's great to have all of these good organizing bodies. We come from well-organized communities. And so for us, it's our people saying, hey, we put in the policy, we put in the work, it's your responsibility to call down there and say. I just think some of the decisions she made lets us know how far removed she is. Like the young man telling her to go back in the house, like we all thought that was hilarious. But in reality, are you talking to a child who's raising his siblings? You don't know that. You were talking at him instead of to him. And that's a big part of the problem. And sometimes it's her experience. Remember, her child is not even a teenager or just being a teenager. And so, in this time that people from 1 to 100 want to be respected. And so it's just a matter of her having that learning curve. But hell, they talked about Jesus. You think I care about her light pack and what she said, and we shamed her and she disappointed? I'm disappointed that I got to be able to tell my people that their people are dying and it's something we could do about it. That's what I'm ashamed about as a Black woman. The number of cases in the Black community are ridiculous. And now they're moving up in the Latinx community, and they're only moving up because we said, make sure they get tested. They still haven't told us the amount of Black and brown folks who've gotten tested. So I'm sure those numbers are way higher. I'm sure more people are testing positive and just refuse to go. I got insurance. I'm not going to pay that $200 for no test. I'm going to quarantine me and take care of myself. But I feel sorry for the family who really can't afford it. I'm just being cheap. I'm just not going to do it. They say it's cold. I'm going to treat it like a cold. But how many of our families are going, I'm going to get this bill? Right. I can't afford this bill. Or I can't go to, like in my community, the testing sites are too far from each other. And so I got to now pay car fare or travel on the bus while I'm already scared to go get tested. And so for us, all she did was give us ammunition for our communities to go, no, we've spoken, we've said what we wanted. And just because you're not open to listening, don't mean we're not going to come after you. And people are who they are. Like y'all expectations are so high for people. Oh, Jesus Christ. They way too high. Like you got to look at people's past, what they did in the community. How were they treated? What have they done? If you look at all of our records, we've been working hard for years. Right. I can't say that for everybody else's background. I'm just saying. Mm-hmm. We got Google for a reason.
Yeah, I think that Jeanette makes brings a very, very key point about. I think that it's some of us who have gotten elected, as organizers, former teachers, people who come from our communities to represent the best interest of the residents, the people who elected us because they voted for change. I think across the city, I think that was, what people across Chicago wanted is change. We come from, a council, a rubber stamp council, indicted politicians. The corruption got to the point where politicians here, and this, Ricardo very well, right? In our ward, we have literally my predecessor was exchanging, favors, political favors for blue pills. That's how bad it got. Right. I mean, we were to the point, and people knew it. Everybody across the world knew that we were getting screwed on a daily basis by corruption, by the status quo taking and leaving us marginalized, and we have to pay the bills. Thief money going subsidizing luxury housing while we have people going homeless. I mean, you name it. We have so much issue of inequality. Then comes to the point where we said, you know what? 6 Democratic Socialists are elected for a reason, because people want like in our ward, and just mentioned, our ward, change that really speaks to the reality of our communities. We have, since then till now, in a pandemic, residents who are hungry, right? We have families who are hungry today, children who are hungry because their, families are employed. We have workers who cannot bring any sort of income to their home, bills. We have housing issues, you name it. Now, the irony of all this, right, is that we have, an administration that supposedly got elected, challenging the issue of prerogative, prerogative and corruption and reform. Well,
Byron, what Alderman prerogative is really quick for people in the audience out there.
Yes, and this is important because this is what the mayor is trying to do. She's trying to govern, in a Trumpian way, like you described, Ricardo, with unilateral power, unilateral decisions. And, there's a misconception, right, that authoritarian leaders are somewhat, effective. Well, but in terms of prerogative, right, the issue that the mayor is being, misusing is the issue of the alderman in each community, on the mayor for that matter, right? Having unilateral decisions on zoning matters or licensing or permits and so on. Let's look at the Hillco example, because this is the perfect example that the mayor is trying to avoid, right? But she will have to respond to the authorities. Since then, not only the Inspector General has launched an investigation, the Illinois Attorney General now launched also a suit against Hillco. Now, and it goes to the issue of prerogative. What the mayor, was speaking, and obviously there's an issue with unilateral decisions. Nobody wanted her to have Solis. Everybody would have done anything to get Solis to not make unilateral decisions, because we know that he was speaking for the developers, right? I mean, that's the notion of it. Or like liquor licenses that are, negotiated behind doors, whatever that is, that residents and small businesses, all of us oppose. So no, we want an open process. We want open meetings. We want to make sure that we're part of the process. What does the mayor translate that to do? Said, you know what? I'm going to use the issue of the indicted alderman, the corruption, but not to change it, not to provide guidelines, not to change the process. No, to accumulate and centralize power. And, she goes and said, well, she assessed the problem. We all know the problem, but her solution, and we're going to allow to people, which is what happened there, that in the middle of a pandemic, there was a corporation who decided that it was okay to, have a demolition in the middle of a pandemic. The images on itself are horrific and already prompted so many investigations, but the mayor continued to dismiss that. And furthermore, has said that she has been talking to neighbors in Little Village that support the project. I don't know who the hell she's talking to, but I tell you that in the community, we certainly don't have, that kind.
Byron got stuck. I think the person she was talking to was Mike Rodriguez, who said that the people are fine with it because he messed up and he won't admit it. So Byron, you're back. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
That's cool. Well, no, I wanted to follow up with what Byron is saying, because we started the first day when we were inaugurated, the mayor gave this speech and she was basically accusing us of being corrupt. Some of us hadn't even been in city council yet. And it was this really disturbing dynamic where we were being accused of being corrupt just because we were aldermen, right? Just because we had certain powers. Like the power of zoning, for example, that it is very true that when we talk about aldermanic prerogative and we talk about zoning powers, there have been aldermen that have used that power in order to make money and do lucrative, deals with people who are absolute corruption. Now, there are people like Carlos who has developed a community-driven zoning process where the people in the, do I have feedback?
No, I think that was Byron signing in again.
Okay. Where that power that we have is transferred to the community, and then you are still in charge of doing that zoning change, but you do it with the input from the community. So there are ways in which the aldermanic prerogative is not necessary. It doesn't necessarily translate to corruption if you actually use that power in the interest of the people. That's not what the mayor is doing, though. But she's accusing us of being corrupt and using the power that she's trying to take from us because we are supposed to be corrupt, and centralizing it like Byron has explained.
She should have said to who she was talking about, and it wasn't us. She was talking about Burke and the other ones, but of course she wasn't going to say that. That's number one.
She generalized.
Oh, most definitely. And at the end of the day, what you all need to realize is the transfer of power means the power is there. You just transfer it from one set of folks to the other, and it's ultimately went to the commissioners.
Mm-hmm. I do want to say that when we talk about the emergency powers ordinance and how we were really invested in having provisions that said that they were going to invest in Black and Brown communities. We wanted to do that because we have seen how things have played out consistently since Mayor Lori Lightfoot came into power, starting with the CTU strike, where what was that strike about? It was about bringing nurses and social workers to schools, and most of the schools that didn't have any nurses and social workers are in the South and West Side, right? So we were talking about sanctuary provisions. Then the cannabis vote. There is not one single license for recreational cannabis in Chicago that is held by a person of color. Everybody is white. We had a vote and we tried to delay the opening of the market in Chicago so that we could figure out how to bring equity to that process, and she pushed forward and we couldn't win, but that was another moment of alliance between the Latinx caucus and the Black caucus. Now we're seeing all sorts of things. Like today, I don't know, Byron, you were in that call where they were talking about racial equity in COVID, and what is the plan that they came up with to help with preventing the spread of COVID in the Latinx community? Can you say what they said? It's door hangers.
Door hangers.
So they're gonna do door hangers in Spanish, and they are going to do town halls. This is their plan. So I mean, seriously, I don't think that this is being taken seriously as it should.
I think one of the things that's interesting, though, is even thinking about like what they're not doing for the Latinx community, right? It was April 7th, I think, in which like Lightfoot held a press conference where she was talking about how they're going to extend the provisions of COVID-19 relief programs to undocumented immigrants. And I think in the Tribune article, when I was doing research for this, and Rosana, you brought it up yesterday in the Tribune article, was Rosa, but I think Carlos Rosa, you brought it up yesterday, was that, that was actually stuff that was already guaranteed within the welcoming city ordinance.
Absolutely.
And Mike Rodriguez and George Cardenas were in that press conference that took place.
So I want to say that I was invited to that press conference as the chair of the immigration committee in the Latino caucus, which we're going to change the name very soon to Latinx caucus because we cannot continue doing this. I feel awful saying Latino caucus.
But can y'all say Latinx? That's what I want to pronounce.
Latinx. I like that. So when I reached out to the mayor's people about it, because I was really confused about what kind of conference I was being invited to, I was like, oh, so there's a fund. And I had a conversation with some of the mayor's IGA liaisons, and then they told me what it was about, the executive order. I was like, yeah, but all of that is already in the Welcoming City Ordinance. Why are you doing a press conference for this? And they said, well, this is a statement of values. And I'm like, a statement of values. Well, I have a lot of work to do up here, so I don't think that I'm going to go down there for a statement of values because that's already in the Welcoming City Ordinance, right? So to do that press conference and take the language that had already been approved, and that is the result of the work of so many people that have working for over a decade in Chicago in order to get the Welcoming City Ordinance approved without all the carve-outs, right? I thought that it was outrageous that then people were looking at that like, oh, the mayor is extending all of this, aid to undocumented. And then the thing is that still, the resources that are available are very little. So you are making undocumented people compete for the resources that people with documents can access, right? So there is nothing dedicated to the undocumented community that is not being able to file for unemployment, that is not being able to file for SNAP or for Medicaid or anything like that, right? So yeah, I thought that was.
What I think is so terrible about that is when you think about that, right? When you think about then advocating for undocumented people, we've seen this over and over, where then it becomes this idea of like, well, what about documented people? Right? What about the Black people that are suffering right now? What about working class white people that are suffering right now? And it's a false way of looking at things, because the reality is, there's enough actual resources. Chicago was just listed as one of the richest cities in the world, literally. And so there's enough resources to actually provide for everybody. I mean, we're talking about a housing crisis. We're talking about, record numbers of homeless people in Chicago. I never grew up seeing the amount of homeless people on the South Side or in Chicago as I see right now, all of a sudden under the viaducts along 16th Street, on the side of the expressways, right? And shanty towns. And so one of the ironies of that is happening, and it makes me want to cry because I'm getting so mad, but it's that like, oh my God, I sounded like my name should be Karen. I'm getting so mad. I want to cry. But like it, but it does, because one of the things that I cannot handle is like, we're talking about lack of housing for homeless people. We're talking about, lack of affordable rent, lack of resources to bail out the 83,000 people, but we're literally giving billions of dollars to Lincoln Yards to house people, to build condos. And it is absurd. It is and woo!
Every day, every day. It's just like,
and then I think here's the duality of it, that and I'm sorry, Charles and Jackie, I'm taking up more space than I have in the past couple of episodes, but one of the things that's really blowing my mind about this is, during all of this, all these kind of hypocrisies that are happening right now during the pandemic, right? The fact that this mayor said she's going to open up schools and mental health clinics, we could use it. 70% of over COVID deaths, the NPR reported, are Black people. Those are the communities where mental health clinics got shut down. How awesome would it be if those things were open to provide them teletherapy? How awesome would it be if the schools that were shut down in those schools were able to turn into resource centers and testing centers, so people didn't have to take the bus at a time, and expose themselves even further? And so like, I think one of the things that I keep thinking about, right, is that type of like betrayal. But then also the fact that at the same time where all this is going on, this is the same mayor that people are hailing right now, that people are sharing cute memes, about, and that she's endearing people. One of the things that we just saw was, and I'll share it right now, was this photo that came up on Facebook.
Please don't put that photo with her on that candle. Please
Yeah,
don't
her on that candle.
Please don't do it. Please
And one of the things, it's there.
I want to see it.
It's there. I'm sharing.
No, you don't. No, you don't, Charles. You don't want to see it.
And so, I think it's.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, man, it's not showing. I'll share it in the comments. But one of the things is a photo of these two women made from. One of them works in Avondale. They made this They put her on a candle, called her Our Lady of Quarantine. They said she's a woman of color getting shit done, and that she's really been helping out. And part of what I think, and one of the things they referenced were all these memes of the meme culture around Lori right now. The videos she's been making has inspiration, and I'm just thinking, like, this is a woman that must have the best PR team.
That's true. They hired a PR firm. You're totally right about that. And I think that the idea is to do like educational sort of content, but at the same time, you have people like Ken Griffin that are financing her being able to become like this figure, right? Like this very popular figure with that, like, there's like some episodes that she's doing, what is it called? Hit Play, Stay Home Hit Play or something like that, where she gives tours of like museums. That stuff is being financed by people like Ken Griffin, right?
Can you tell everyone who Ken Griffin is really quick?
One of the richest person in
the richest man in
Illinois.
He also helped elect Rauner, by the way.
Right.
He helped elect Rauner. He seems to be also one of the advisors for Trump's crazy plan to reopen the economy. So, talking about who is behind this PR campaign, I think Rosanna, you name it very well. These are the people who are literally paying for this PR campaign, who's paying for the cute memes, who's paying for these videos that they put out. I mean, when people are hungry, people need shelter, people need mental health clinics, the small businesses are shutting down. And then we live in a state of propaganda where, the power has been, if before it was just it was a little group. Now it's even a more and more, a small, it's a much smaller group of people corporations, developers, the status quo making decisions. So instead of democratizing spaces, talk about the prerogative. Okay, let's make sure that we have public meetings, make sure that we have impact studies before permits like the one in Hilco are given away. Let's make sure that we have clear guidelines for zoning changes so people know what is being built in their own communities. Nothing. This becomes even more pay to play than even ever before. Go talk to them, to the departments, go talk to the mayor, and there's now not even local advocacy of any time, in any sort. So I just want to caution us with this kind of model where we have gone from Ram, who after this went to work for Wall Street. That's the kind of leaders that we had before, and now we are going back to the same or worse, where we have people like Ken Griffin and developers line up to run an economy that is already hurt. We have massive levels of inequality, and now we have the richest people in the state and the city running our lives. We need to be outraged. We need to organize. We need to take back the ability of our communities to have self-determination, so they respect us and not walk all over us like they have done for way too long.
Can you all talk about the recovery for all proposals that you all are pushing for? I know that it's a set of measures at the city and at the state level, from what I understand. So can you just help us understand what that's about, and what are the things that you're advocating for?
So the Right to Recovery is a coalition of organizations that includes unions, includes community organizations, from environmental organizations to tenant unions to senior organizations. It's a pretty diverse coalition of people, and it's actually pretty awesome that so many different groups have understood the overlap and the root of the problem that doesn't allow us to have the things that we need. So it is a set of 62 demands that have been triaged in order of urgency. So you have demands around preventing or containing the spread of the virus, which is related to PPE, decarceration. Then you have demands that are about alleviation of misery, that has to do with rent relief. And then you have recovery measures that are meant to be taken after we get out of the stay-at-home order. There are several measures that now are a reality that we're proposing. Delia Ramirez just came out with a rent relief measure for the state that it's very necessary. We saw how Matt Martin's ordinance in city council got shut down pretty quickly. But I think Delia Ramirez has a shot of passing the act that she's proposing that would give mortgage relief and rent relief to people in the state of Illinois. So we are together and we're fighting. We are standing with all of the organizations that are part of Right to Recovery, and we are looking for ways to make sure that we're proposing legislation and fighting for legislation at every level of government that is going to help us survive this crisis and make sure that that all the things that have been exacerbated by this virus, that were not created by the virus, because poverty was not created by the virus, homelessness was not created by this virus, but right now we have an opportunity to look at all of these issues and create solutions, because this is not the last freaking pandemic we're gonna have. This is gonna happen over and over again because we have destroyed this planet. So we are going to have to be ready for the next pandemic that is going to come, or for the next disaster that is going to come. And those safety nets need to be in place.
Go ahead, Charles, I think you were going to say something.
No, I was going to ask what interaction with City Hall look like for the people. Like, I know
Charles just freeze, and is it just
George Blake would do, but like, how do the Chicagoans like interact with City Council now that we're confined to our homes? How can we?
So there is a public comment section in every City Council meeting. You have to call or fill out a form online in the city clerk's website. It is a lottery, so they will let you know if you made it or not. There is about 30 minutes for public comment. I mean, one of the problems with that is, again, like, it's only accessible if you are on the internet. It's only accessible if you are technology savvy. So we have seen, I mean, we have to organize if we want our people to be able to express themselves. When Matt Martin proposed his ordinance, there was the whole realtor lobby there. They took almost every spot to talk about that ordinance, and it was like, oh my god, like, there was in that meeting, I think everybody but one person was white that were in public comment. We were like, this is nothing like city council. Like, in city council is very diverse, the people who come to talk. Now that we're doing it online, is, you know, the access definitely suffers for everyday people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even thinking about when you said that every certain person was white, right? Like, because I think why that's important, and, you know, is this way in which, in a very historical way, we know that working class white people have kind of been used against people of color, right? That they've kind of been triangulated to kind of be a buffer, and to kind of you know, to kind of uh, their own anxieties have kind of been used to fuel racism, right? And to fuel division. And then it's really ironic because at the same time, anytime a person of color ever calls out, a black or brown person, right, ever calls out, you know, racial disparity, it's considered like they're bringing up race, right? But then again, right, we see certain differences. Like, one of the things that we see happening, right, is like artists taking over, and usually, right, transplant artists, white artists predominantly, right, taking over kind of communities of color, moving in and furthering gentrification, right? And actually, in reality, and even with those women that made those candles, right, like, they're actually artists who can be priced out at any moment, when once someone like Lightfoot enables developers to kind of, you know, to kind of take over communities and price out working class people. So, like, when we think about these racial politics, and Charles mentioned this earlier, right, when he said the white caucus, right, kind of interfering with people of color, how do we create solidarity across racial lines to actually be able to see the change we want? Because the reality is, someone that's in Belmont Cragen has racism towards their brown, towards their brown neighbor. You know, people that are in Mount Greenwood have racism to the black people that are a mile over on the other side of Western. You know, and they have more in common with them than they do with Lightfoot, than they do with Ken Griffin. Right. So how are you all, do you guys see, and this is actually playing out in city council. So what are the things that, you know, the stuff that you have to say to people, and the stuff that we can actually do, you know, to bridge those divides?
I think we have to use our base of folks that live in those communities to talk to those elected officials. That's the only thing people understand is votes. That we don't understand anything else. Why is it that you think that most elected officials take care of their seniors? Because they know seniors vote. And so it's a matter of us to stop saying, I tell people all the time, don't come organize me, organize your people. Like, my people are just fine. We get the problems. We know what's happening. Organize your own people. We don't really need your help over here. We good. And let's walk together. Sometimes it's those conversations we've had. And so my experience has been in city council that they all say, or the majority of my coworkers have said, hey, if you need something, call me. Let's have a conversation. And so during this Woodlawn issue that I'm having around housing, I've actually been able to go to some of my coworkers and explain to them the problem. I think sometimes we think people know the problem because they're from Chicago, and that's the least thing. So I'll just say his name. I had a good conversation with Marty Quinn, and he did not understand the dynamics of what was happening in Woodlawn. And when I had a conversation with him, he understood and said, hey, I'll support you. It's your community. That's what's right. That's what you feel. But sometimes they don't understand the dynamics. Now, some of them is just as racist as the day is long. It is what it is. They just are. Ain't no ifs, ands, and buts about it. And some of them I don't deal with at all. I speak because that's my responsibility. And I'm willing to work with anybody for my community. But when I see that you're going to make it about race, or you're going to make it about America the Great, and not realize that America is kicking our ass, right, then I got some real issues with you. The problem is we don't talk about race enough. We're scared to say. That's just like they always talk about there ain't no black and brown unity. I've been working with Byron for 10 years. Right. I've known Rosanna for the last 3 years, and the minute that me and that sister met, we've been willing to work together. So say that's stuff they use to keep us apart. I tell people all the time, this is an opportunity for us to put everything to the side. Look, it's a bunch of people that I don't like. I just don't like them because they don't talk right, they don't act right. But for my community, I'm willing to work with you and for us to get some understanding and work together. Because right now we all need each other. This happened for a reason. It's because we ain't willing to work together. We get our pride to the side. It's too many big eyes and little U's. Right now, we all make the same. We all staying at home. Ain't nobody getting a haircut. Ain't nobody getting their toes done. We all is in the same boat. And so since we are, let's treat each other accordingly and be willing to work together. But we got to be able to say you wrong. And with this administration, that has fell on deaf ears. Like this was not a good decision. Hillco is going to get another contract. I don't care what nobody say. They ain't going to get another contract, then I'll believe that this was a mistake. This was an honest mistake. That's not what's going to happen. Hey, cutie.
I know.
I'm not going to believe that. Hey.
Marcel, ¿dónde está naranja?
I know. I'm not going to believe that. And so when do we get to a space where we're comfortable enough to be strong for ourselves and our community? As a Black woman, I should be able to speak up for my community. But that don't mean as a Latino man or a Latino woman or a white man or a white woman, you got to shrink. Just know this is my truth and be able to respect my lived experience, not what I think, what you read in a book or your opinion or what you see on the meme or what the commercials say. It's my lived experience who makes me who I am. And at the end of the day, all them little commercials, all them little memes, yeah, that's cute, that's nice. What are we doing to stop Black and brown people from that? When we come up with that answer, then we can have some real dialogue. Right
but
now,
if you're really about it, why are you in San Francisco right now?
First of all, that's just so you don't see this junky room.
I think
you're gonna have to look at San Francisco.
There's mad Black and brown unity. I've gotten drunk with Charles so many times. That counts, right?
But I think work
that
like
definitely counts. That counts.
The work that United Working Families and all of the organizations are doing with Right to Recovery is a great example of Black and brown unity. Right now, for example, a lot of the union members that are CNAs and healthcare workers with SEIU healthcare, they are thinking about going on strike, and they have a campaign. And most of the people who are occupying or that hold those jobs are Black and brown women who are fighting together right now for decent work conditions, for a living wage. For PPE, for things that are absolutely basic, like the fact that a CNA is making less than freaking living wage is outrageous, right? Like this is the spine of the healthcare system. Without them, the rest of the people can't do their jobs, and these jobs are held by Black and brown women who are right now fighting together to make sure that they get what they need. So these solidarity lines are being drawn by people fighting together, and the recognition that our struggle is the same, right? Or very similar. There are definitely differences, but we are trying to get the same conditions of life, right? So those things are happening, and we need to uplift them. And the fact that the Latinx caucus and the Black caucus have been standing together in the last two very important votes. We did it for the cannabis vote, like many of us stood with the Black caucus, and that was a really significant moment. And I remember how important it was for a lot of my Black colleagues to see us stand and say that we were voting with them. And they thank us so much, because that's something that you don't see in city council. And this time we were able to do it together, and slowly you start building that kind of trust, right? Like, I'm going to stand with you because I understand what this struggle is about. So I mean, we have a lot of work to do, but I think that we're doing it, and we're building, and Chicago is an incredible place to build movement. Like, Chicago fights like hell, and it's one of the reasons why I love this city, and why I decided to stay here. And people, of every race comes together in Chicago to stand and fight. And I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. I'll come back.
I just like to briefly add kind of what Rosanna and Janet already have said, but because I do feel optimistic about the future, in the sense that we are organizing, we're being organizing. The fact that we have been building, I think Janet said, we have been building solidarity across communities, right? The Leave the Ban Coalition, for instance, for rent control. That's a multi-ethnic, cross demographics coalition for democracy, to make sure that we are able to fight what Alec imposed on us in the late 90s. This is the real corporations imposing their laws on us. Now we have a coalition of OCOC on the south side, Pilsen Alliance, and then we got like one north side October for Justice. We have coalitions that are working already. We need to make sure that we get more people, we empower more people, especially young people right now. That's what I feel. I mean, I don't think Bernie Sanders was a fluke. There's a movement that is coming. When I see Alejandro Ocasio-Cortez or Representative Omar, you name it, it is coming. Now, the politicians and the status quo, right, will be living in self-denial, thinking that maybe their memes or their cute videos, the TikTok, whatever, is going to persuade the people that they're doing their job. But the reality of it is that there are people on the ground, and I think that there are leaders on the ground that need help, that need support, that need to make sure that we get more people involved to understand what's at stake. At stake, is the right to the city, is the right to stay here, to live, to have a neighborhood, a community like anybody else. Look, many of us, come from, migrate here because our neighborhoods are destroyed, and then you come to, and they destroy that, and then you go from place to place. This is our time. I firmly believe that we realign ourselves, that we humanize each other. I really see it, I do think start people seeing the work that people in hospitals are doing, the people that, people in groceries. I start seeing more humanity in people. This is the time that we organize, so we see what's at stake and what is keeping us from making the change that we want. What and who are these interests at stake? The same developers that keep profiting and have been profiting for a long time, who get TIF money for their whatever projects they want, when people and small businesses are in need of those funds and a brink of bankruptcy, and workers who need PPE, you name it. This is the time, and I firmly believe that we have working people at home, hopefully watching something like this, where we can see that we have been denied the opportunity to have good quality schools. We have been denied the access to mental health care in general, and the consequences are literally killing us. This is our opportunity for us, and that's what our leaders have to understand or get away or get out of the way. We need to have people who represent our best interests, and we need to come together to once and for all take it away from these elites, these oligarchs that are literally running the country and our cities. So I think this is a good organized. I know it's a really tough time, but I do think that this is a good organized moment on the ground to continue to take. We need 26 votes, and I believe that we will get there.
Yeah. I think, we're at time a little bit. Jackie and Charles, do you have anything pressing?
No, I'm good.
Jack? Yeah, Rosana, go ahead.
Well, I want to say that tomorrow, Right to Recovery is having a right to recovery. People are going to get in their cars, and we're going to go around the Thompson Center, and we're going to demand that our lives are funded so that we can have a just recovery. If you want to join, I think Ricardo put the Google Doc in the comments. So sign up and join us. A lot of us are going to be there in that ride, making sure that that we're being visible, right? And that we're demanding the things that we need. And then lastly, I would like to really invite people to join the efforts that are taking place in our community right now and become active. Like, we need to hear your voice. You matter. You deserve to have a decent living situation. You deserve to have housing. You deserve to be fed. You deserve all of the things that are basic for us to be able to function as human beings and as communities. And we're doing a great job of taking care of one another through mutual aid, but we also need to demand that the government take action. So join the IPOs in your community. Those are the independent political organizations that are actively trying to organize outside the establishment that we have and change the status quo. Join the mutual aid networks in your community. Get in touch with our offices, and we can point you to anything that is happening in other wards that we know of, or we can plug you in with things that are happening citywide, like the Right to Recovery initiative and other things. it's a great time to get involved and get radical.
Byron and Jeanette, I think you guys want to add a sentence of advice or of, of pointing people into the right direction.
So we all are still working. My office is open on Tuesday and Thursday. Our phones are forwarded, calls are forwarded to our cell phones. I give out my cell number to people anyway. What I want people to understand is we're always, as organizers, you might not agree on policy, but we're willing to work with the mayor and the mayor's office. I say that all the time. This is not us fighting against each other. This is saying, take our lived experience and listen. This is us, our willingness to work together. And
Yeah.
so please feel free to call.
Oh, Jeanette, you had some connectivity issues there. I think you were saying, please feel free
Feel
to.
free to add me on Facebook.
It sounds like strange. It sounds like
Go
stranger
to the
things in
Right
this.
to Recovery.
Jeanette, you had some connectivity issues.
Yeah.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, now, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Listen, it is what it is. It's a million people on the internet now, so what can I say? But know that we are here. Our willingness to work within our communities. I tell people all the time, if you need support, I don't care if I'm your alderman or not. I'm always willing and open and ready to help you. When it comes to the right to recovery, we're talking about paid sick leave. We're talking about hazardous pay. We're talking about housing. And so go to the Right to Recovery website to make sure that you get the list of demands, and just know that you got a city council that's fighting for you and with you.
Righttorecovery.org.
Yeah, I think we're all, in the right to recovery mode, right? And I think that's a really important campaign. So outside of what already Rosanna and I think Jeanette articulated very well, and plugging into these efforts that already exist, this is a moment for us across the city to realize the opportunity that we have. If you look at amazing people like the young people that are right here right now doing and joining the movement, I do think that this is a call for us to join not only I know that the IPOs and all that, but also there being neighborhood groups, there are community groups that are doing the work. There's a time to volunteer. This is a time to find ourselves. There's so many young people, there's so many people in general that are trying to connect. Right now, look, I give you an example very briefly, but they have demonized the democratic socialists and working family. They demonize us because there's so much in common right now. We're gonna have tomorrow with Alderman Espada, another democratic socialist, we're going to be advocating for small businesses. So we take the money that they're giving away to luxury housing to make sure that we protect the small businesses. So we care about the small businesses. We care about the working people. We care about the Black and brown communities that are being left out for so long. And it's important that we get the message. So my actual pitch is continue to watch this kind of non-mainstream media. Continue to read the Salsa Weekly. Continue to get out there and find the real information. You will find it. What we have to battle is this mainstream, misinformation channels, and get to the bottom of it, the grassroots. There's time to volunteers. You can volunteer with your local alderman. You can find yourself as the new, future journalist that is going to speak truth to power. This is our time. And I tell you that I feel very optimistic that, when we see atrocities happening in our communities, we're not silent anymore. And it's because we have these kind of platforms. So let's continue, to open up these spaces and get more people involved.
Yo, let's give it up for Byron, Rosanna, and Jeanette. Let's give them some likes, give them some heart emojis, whatever you want to put in there, some applauses. I want you guys to stick around as we close out the show. I got a couple announcements, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jackie for updates. What Byron is saying, right? The idea of you don't have to just look for the non-stream media. You can be a part of the mainstream media. Right now, the Hoodoisie is hiring people. You could be a part of the non-mainstream media. Right now, the Hoodoisie is hiring people to be part of our Zoomoisie series. We are commissioning people, past guests, anyone that's ever seen the show, people that are part of our community, or people that have a story that they want to share or an analysis they want to share. We're commissioning. We'll give you $200 to host a mini Hoodoisie just like this. You pick 2 guests for an issue. We train you on how to host. We train you on how to have these interviews, and then we create an episode out of it. So think about the stuff you're not seeing in the news and in the media, and we'll help you put it on there, and we'll provide you a community and some support to do it right. Also, in our collaboration with Southside Weekly, we'll be announcing some new developments. We're launching a new initiative called Holding It Down, that'll invite you to share stories of how you're holding it down and how you see people holding it down in your community and across the city, providing radical mutual aid and support to each other, whether that is whether that's dropping off groceries for the abuela down the block. I sound like one of those, when you say abuela down the block, you can't say it anymore because you sound like one of those white people that's trying to sound like down, like Janine Cummings in that book. You know what I'm saying? Or if it's a dope ass mutual aid work, or providing information. I'm thinking about La Carnalita, B. Hernandez, and Victor Arroyo that are doing a raffle. I'm thinking about the work that Kelly Hayes has been doing, informing people just off of her Facebook and Twitter. So shout out to them. Also, we'll be posting stuff on United Family Workers Ride to Recovery. Shout out to Rocio Maribel Garcia Almazan, who's working with them and has been plugging me in about it. That's that. Let's give it up to Jackie.
So before I go to my updates, I just want to say something that I couldn't say earlier because I've been having connection issues throughout the whole show. But coalition building is part of Chicago history. And, the displacement and the disinvestment in Black and Brown communities is really nothing new. And it goes back at least 50 years. If we examine the role that the Black Panthers played in 1968 and 1969 and how they came together with the Young Lords and the Puerto Ricans up in the north side, these people were fighting for the same issues that we are now fighting for, which is to protect our homes, to avoid displacement from our communities, to protest police brutality, and to just advocate for more resources for our community. Back in the day, there was literally zero support for Black and Brown communities within City Council. So the advantage that we have in this day and age is that we have people who are from our communities, who are from Chicago neighborhoods, who are Black and Brown, and who understand the conditions and the worldview of local Chicagoans. So this is a real opportunity for us to build coalition, not just at the grassroots level and the street level, but also to engage our elected officials, because now there's a chance that they're going to support what we want to push forward in the city council. So I think this is a really unique opportunity for us to learn from the past. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's look at what has worked, 50 years ago and what we can implement to our situation today. As far as our updates, I want to say that something that has already been mentioned is that Latinos in Illinois have surpassed Black people in regards to the most cases of COVID-19 in the state. And the death toll in Little Village is really taking the lead among Latino communities. But still, we have Black neighborhoods in Chicago, like South Shore and Austin, which are topping the charts. All of this is to say that we are all suffering very similarly, and it's not a competition, but really a call for these communities to mobilize across geographic and racial lines around issues that we have in common, and issues that we have talked about on this show and previous shows, such as COVID-19, but also our public education, affordable housing, over-policing and incarceration, and the list goes on. As a response to the rising numbers of Latinx COVID cases, there are new curbside testing sites and drive-through testing sites that have a special focus on Latinx majority areas. One of those is in Back of the Yards on 51st and Ashland, and another one is in Pilsen on 21st and Morgan. The truth is that we do need more testing sites in general in the west and the south side. If you were to place all of the testing locations on a map, that map is going to look exactly like any other Chicago data map in terms of inequality and inequity. So just something to keep in mind for us to keep advocating for more testing sites in disadvantaged communities. Another update is that the Greater Chicago Food Depository announced a whole bunch of pop-up food pantries in the south and west sides. I don't have the locations with me, but if you go to chicagofoodbank.com, you will be able to get a list of all of these locations. And then also something that was mentioned earlier in the show is that the Illinois Attorney General announced that he was going to file a lawsuit against Hilco, the contractors, and whichever companies were involved in the demolition that choked up Little Village, an entire Mexican neighborhood. I think this is good news for the community because up until this point, there were class action lawsuits that people were afraid were not going to be thorough or represent all of the affected residents in Little Village. However, the Attorney General did not name the city of Chicago, did not name any city department or city official in the suits. So this just means that the entire processes that allowed Hilco to work during a pandemic will go essentially untouched. So this is something that we have to keep working and pushing the city to resolve or remediate. Finally, Rosanna was mentioning this earlier, the right to recovery. It's a caravan that is taking place tomorrow where various organizations and grassroots groups are going to be supporting the right to recovery proposals being proposed by the elder people on our show today. And this caravan is going to go through low income and working class neighborhoods, advocating for free mass testing, advocating for worker protections, for free health care during COVID, and for rent and mortgage cancellation. So if you want to participate or if you want to learn more, you can find more information at bit.ly/recovery rate. Thank you.
Yeah, let's give it up. Ooh, let's give it up for Jackie. I think one of the things that I'm laughing about is like it's such a Jackie thing to like stay in the cut for so long and then just like come out and like drop some knowledge on everybody, which is what she does in our meetings. Or sometimes it looks like me making a flyer and sending it and then her being like, yo, you have 7 typos in this. But you're brilliant as always.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, this is a historic first for the first time on the Hoodoisie for the past 3 years, twice a month. And last year for some big events like our Co-Conspirators Forum or our Wet Water Summit, I've been able to close out the show with a Got You Last commentary. For Got You Last commentaries have turned into Rona Reflections, which is how we're closing out pandemic issues. And for the remainder of the pandemic issues episodes, I will be able to hand that honor over to one of my favorite collaborators, human beings, the younger brother I wish I would have had, Charles Alexander Preston. So Charles, take it away with the Rona Reflection.
Okay, got you. Tonight's Hoodoisie features socialists in Chicago City Council, each elected by Chicagoans in their respective wards, yearning for change and a humane approach to how the city is governed. Never before has Chicago witnessed this many city council members fundamentally opposed to capitalism in ideology and worldview. Our last election was historic for many reasons, but I love highlighting how Chicago voted for socialists in office. This means people are awakening to the fact that true liberation has nothing to do with personalities we elect or we see on this Zoom screen, but has everything to do with our commitment to our imagination and values. We're currently living what was thought impossible, improbable, or unrealistic, but is it not the duty of the revolutionary to make fantasy tangible, to create the wells of hope for a new day when the state increases its profit-driven motives to lay our hoods barren of resources? We Chicagoans should not overlook the history of our city council. Historically, this body has been in lockstep with the mayor, except for when the grassroots got Harold Washington elected and council wars commenced. A showdown between the cop-loving white men making up the Verdoliak 29 and pro-Washington council members. But since we haven't had a democracy in City Hall where contention, conflict, and argument are normal, no, what was normalized was Democratic mayors closing clinics, schools, expanding police budgets, and just general neoliberal practices of not placing the needs of the oppressed first, with little to no pushback from City Council. Chicago knows dictatorship. Today we see aberration. Council members featured tonight have chosen to stand on socialist principles instead of letting fear of retaliation override them. They aren't backing down and won't yield to power that is telling them to fall in line with the tired practices of the now and yesteryear. We cannot allow them to be more radical than we are. We shouldn't be content being the dripping canister at all. COVID-19 pandemic, I think it's vitalized health, but you and this moment to expand. We are more surveilled, we have more police, so what do? If the action is moved to digital spaces, we organize digitally. We take up public comment at virtual City Hall. We email articles and press releases. We group text. We start chat rooms and forums. We Zoom. We YouTube. We tweet. We post. We podcast. We fundraise. We boost radical organizations and mutual aid. We inform. We educate. We caravan. We bail people out. We flood the information channels of our politicians with demands. We plug phone lines. We hack shit. We create political memes. We organize. We commit to every tool in the toolbox that furthers our intent to end oppression for all. We become as relentless with values as the state is to death.
Hey, let's give it up for Charles. Charles, activity issues right there, but we'll be sharing the full Got You Last or Rona reflection in the comments of this, and we'll be posting it tomorrow. Again, we're so excited. I want to give another round of virtual applause for our guests, Byron Cicho Lopez, Rosana Rodriguez, and Jeanette B. Taylor. Let's give it up for them. I also want to thank my co-host, the new love of my lives during this pandemic, Jackie Serrato and Charles Alexander Preston. Tune in next week. Our next episode is on education. We'll be having longtime educator Alicia Torres on the show. We'll also be having Stacey Davis Gates, CTU badass, and we'll be having Dr. David Omatoso Stovall up in this mother effort. So please tune in to talk about education during and after the pandemic. Love you all so much. Like us. Don't remember, if you're interested in being a part of the Hoodoisie Zoomwasi, message us. And one more time, let's give it up for our guests, and we'll see you all next Wednesday.